So how did it feel for you guys writing those new poems and trying to get a particular frustration and pain out? What was the process of that?
It was painful. It meant going to a lot of dark places, and lately I haven't known if I even have the words to speak. So finding them was a little bit difficult, but I think they said everything I wanted to say and hoped to say and could say.
Yeah. How did you feel about it, Chiamaka?
I like that you use the term frustration because that accurately describes the process for me. I remember waking up this morning and seeing Dennis Chila trending on Twitter and, burst of joy in my heart. And then actually reading her interview on The Late Late Show and sort of just feeling very, very, I think I kind of just felt her pain. I felt a lot of empathy for her and the things that she's experienced. It's like this mass of affirmations and mass of people who now see her as a national treasure, but who aren't really acknowledging that the experiences fueling her work are really painful and stem from often discrimination and stem from racial abuse. And it's like I feel like we should put the same level of attention and awareness to those experiences as we do to the art that results from it.
It feels like we have done really well in terms of talking about racism online or in person even, and there's a big discussion, especially since May and June when George Floyd died. But it also feels like we're going back to a dark place, like with recent online abuse, racist abuse, and also in our capital city, seeing racist graffiti around. How does that feel, seeing that and hearing that?
I mean, personally, seeing stuff like that, I just think that has always sort of been there. I feel like some people haven't grown with the times, haven't grown with Ireland. I mean, for years I worked in retail, and I did see, targeted abuse at some of my colleagues. Most of them were from India and Pakistan. And it wasn't just the color of the skin, because I was also a dark person, but it was the accent as well. But I think that, again, back to, I wrote those poems in order to again, provide some hope, because things are gradually changing. I think that they can, but at the same time, I think Ireland is a country where I think we should be leading those kind of changes, because remember the poem Imelda May wrote about, you can't be racist and Irish. I really those points really resonated with me, because Ireland has a history of, fights and oppression and, just coming out on the other side. And I just think that if a country should understand, the kind of feelings that people have about being oppressed and being angry, Ireland should be it, and there should be a little bit more, not understanding, but going forward, acknowledgement that this is happening. There are people who feel this way in modern 21st century society, and we used to feel this way, and we should do better,
Yeah. How do you feel about it, Jess?
It almost seems that every day or every week that there's something else that knocks the words out of me for a while. I lost my words too, probably for a few months. And writing these poems was really good to process it, but my frustration was I found myself veering between having a kind of complete rant and anger to some kind of idealistic state, and I felt that I had to really battle to bring it really truthfully into my experience of it and not kind of be pulled either way. And that has been, I feel better for it. But I think that was frustrating, and but still these things are just happening all the time that just steal my words away.
I found that, back in May, June, when Black Lives Matter started trending again online, that it was so hard personally for me to put words down, because I do write poems, but it's so hard to find those words, and it can be so difficult. Do you experience that yourself, that it's almost like you're so frustrated inside with what's going on that you can't really put it down on paper?
Yeah, all the time. And I think Chi-Chi was saying that in her poem,
and she was talking about black girls looking for a place to find ease and to relax. And I found myself not only being stolen of West, like you said, but not wanting to fight anymore. Like, it shouldn't be my battle. It shouldn't be our battle. So yeah, that's also been difficult.
Do you find, Chiamaka, that there's something particularly that you want to say to these people that question your identity and question why you're in Ireland? What do you want to say to them directly?
You know, I don't believe in fighting hate with hate. I think I would say to them, please cash app me money to pay for therapy. That's what I would say. You know, I'm sort of at the point where I'm kind of sick of platitudes. I'm sick of, you know, at that time in June, after the murder of George Floyd by the hands of police in America, I got so many messages from, you know, acquaintances and people I had worked with briefly at some time or the other. And it was like, I don't have time or space or emotional energy to respond to all of these. I would rather see tangible, you know, tangible proof of a society that actually cares for people of color and cares for ethnic minorities and cares for, you know, non-white people within its communities. I don't want your sorries or your how are you doing, you know.
I think it was Celavita that said on Twitter yesterday that because she's a black woman, she feels like people, and particularly white people, always come up to her asking about racism and thinking that just because she's a black woman, she's just automatically an activist. Do you find that because you're a person of colour, that you're just always being asked these questions about racism and you're always the one having to explain it and talk about it? Do you find that?
Well, to be honest, no one has asked me any of it recently. Maybe it's because I've been sort of working home. But yeah, no, I mean, people, I did notice a little bit of a difference in behavior from people at work. You know, there was, for some reason, maybe just been, not that they were being nicer, but they were just being overly considerate. And I just thought because of what was happening. But yeah, no, people tend to ask questions and things like that, but not necessarily about activism, if that makes sense. I've always encouraged it, you know, like I'd rather people ask questions than say something that's going to offend me and I'm going to have to explain why it's offensive, you know. And luckily I've been around people who just ask me things about, like, you know, my country and, you know, or how long I've been in Ireland and what is it like and what do you think about what's happening. So no one has asked me directly about like what's happening and how I feel about it, but at the same time, you know, I've always been lucky that I could explain. I've always been able to explain to people, well, you know, I am a multifaceted, I'm black, I'm African, I'm multifaceted, and I live here, you know, and I exist here, and it's my home, and they've accepted that, most people, you know, and the idea is eventually they accept that for everyone who's from here and who doesn't always look like a mold, if that makes sense.
Do you find it tiring, Jess? People constantly asking for your explanation on things?
Yeah, there was also the particular week where a lot of people seem to be asking from anything from how are you to can you kind of explain this to is it really racist in Ireland, or is it just not diverse, and is it a diversity problem or a racist problem? There was a particular kind of intense couple of weeks. I mean, we know this from any time we've gathered a group of women together through Beyond Representation. The thing that always strikes me is the difference in experiences, and there's always themes and there's always a few kind of common things coming out. And I'm always praying when I'm giving an answer that either that I end up diminishing my experience because then I say, but that's not everybody, and I'm like adding all these caveats in of don't take it, but then at the same time I know there are some commonalities. I know there are some, where are you from? I mean, that one, I think everybody can have a rant about that question or has an opinion about the feeling it evokes when somebody asks you that. But also, I want to tell them also the range of different opinions, experiences that are going on, which is why I love a panel like this, because we're all going to have very different opinions on some things too. and those opinions need to be heard.
Yeah. And bringing it back to writing a bit, I feel like there is a lack of black writers, particularly maybe in our education system. What do you want to see going forward in terms of that?
I laugh because this was the first thing that I've been thinking about. Me and Chiamaka went to Loretta Bray, and my little cousins went there, and my older cousins went there. So it's been a trail of black girls, but only 4 at a time in the whole school. And it was very frustrating, I think. When I looked at, I actually Googled up what's on the syllabus, and I was like looking through it. And of course I was frustrated because I was looking because my little cousin came home a little bit frustrated, and she says, I talked to our English teacher because she said the N-word while she was reading the book, and I told her I wasn't comfortable. I put her aside and tried to explain it, and she was like, well, I'll have to talk to the other teachers who are all white and see about that, but we need to keep the atmosphere of the book, so we're gonna keep reading it. And for the rest of the year, that's what she was listening to, so yeah. So of course, I think we need more ethnic writers, more diverse writers on top of that. Stories that aren't told from people who are watching the oppression but are going through it. Yeah, I think that would be a great starting point.
What do you want to see, Chiamaka?
Oof. I could draw up a syllabus right now. Like, just call me up, Loretta Bray. I'll give you a syllabus. Yeah, I think I would definitely reiterate what Casey has said. There definitely needs to be narratives from the perspective of people, of the oppressed, rather than the oppressors or the bystanders. That word is difficult to say, man. People who watch on while others are oppressed. There's just so much nuance missing from our syllabus, especially at junior cycle and senior cycle in secondary school. I mean, I think everyone should experience the joy of doing an English literature degree. I think that should just be a starting point for anyone who goes to college. Like in America, how they have liberal arts as like a standard within their higher education system. I think it definitely shapes a person into being a better, or at least a more critical citizen, and who's able to utilize critical thinking and not just, propagate and perpetuate really archaic and often poisonous ideas and ideologies. I think there is discourse now about taking of Mice and Men and To Kill a Mockingbird off of the syllabus, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that they obviously should not create a vacuum, and they shouldn't just take away those books and then have nothing, but they should actually look at writers like Octavia Butler, or like writers like Toni Morrison, writers like Langston Hughes, writers like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, writers like Chinua Achebe, like writers like Ama Ata Aido, like writers that can articulate the experience of being African within an African context, and then of being African within a Western context, and to be able to articulate those nuances of experience. To me, it seems very, very obvious, and so there is frustration there that the people who actually sit in rooms and make decisions are not listening to us, or just don't care about our opinions, our educated opinions, may I add, because I do have a BA in honors in English literature, and sometimes it feels like all of that work, all of that struggle, all of that talent, all of that discipline is invalidated because I'm not white and Irish.
I've got an English literature BA as well. And it's so frustrating, like the syllabus discussion is so frustrating because Ireland has had to battle this for years in terms of its own voice, having Irish voices come through poetry and playwrights and everything, and not being seen as British. Like in England, they were just trying to adopt them as like a British poets, and it's like, no, these are Irish poets. So I think it's obvious in the syllabus that there are different identities that can emerge through the voices. And I think we should stop thinking of there's literature and then there's all the other sorts. And maybe we just need to put them all into boxes and have like mice and men and, you know, that in a particular white racist box. Instead of just call it the literature box, but keep it there and go, do you want to read some of that stuff? There we go. And then have some of the other voices come through, but just see them for what it is, as opposed to this is proper literature. And then these are all these other labels that you can explore if you want to.
I think there's something a bit of that. I mean, on the flip side, I just, as well, living in Ireland for so long, I just think that it's also very important that talking to a black person who writes shouldn't be about talking about oppression. Because I write love stories, I write like happy things and happy ever afters. I firmly believe in that, because these are the things, even when things were tough for me younger, these are stories that, I mean, I didn't read love stories all the time, but I read stories that made me happy, like switched me, made my mood lighter. So I write that. This is what I do to make people not, like if you're having a bad day, you're allowed to do that, but you should be able to, like your escapism, your movies and your books should lift you out of it. And as a black writer, I go into a space and I feel like all people want to try and talk about is what's made me sad. And I don't want to do that, you know, because there's lots of people that can talk about that. I want to tell you the happy stuff, you know. I want to write happy poems and I want to write love stories. And sometimes I go to Easton's and I look at the bestsellers and I see what they sell and it's great. But there are lots of people who write stuff I write around the world, which is great. But at the same time, I want to write. I'm from Ireland. Born in Nigeria, raised in Ireland. And I write love stories in a very sort of multicultural context. This is not something that I learned from Nigeria or Ireland. This is something that I learned from a life experience of everything. Yeah. It shouldn't be something that is ignored, you know, and it shouldn't be ignored just because it doesn't tell you that, you know, someone called me the N-word on the street. That's my business, you know. I should be able to tell you, like, I should be able to present literature in the way that I want to present it, in a very light and happy way. And people shouldn't always try to pull it back to, like, you know, I don't know, just heavier stuff. I just think that there should be room for all sorts of writing from people of all backgrounds. I think that's also very important when we're telling stories.
I completely understand where you're coming from, Bernard Full, and I totally agree with you there. And I hope this conversation continues. But unfortunately, that is it from Say It Aloud, We Are Irish 2020. Thank you so much to everyone watching. Thank you so much to everyone that helped put this event together, from Killian Coyle, Joey Kavanagh, and the rest of the crew. Thank you to Beyond Representation as well. Thank you to our fantastic performers, Jess Majekodunmi, Lord Full, Casey, Chiamaka Eni Amadi. Thank you so much for your beautiful poems. They are so powerful. And I really hope this conversation continues. We will continue to raise our voices and challenge those who challenge our identity. And we're Irish. Stay safe and thank you.